right, let's go ahead and get started. And if we have other folks join us, that's great. So just a little bit about how this will work. My name is Lindsay Hoyt. I am Director of Admission here at Reed. So thank you for joining us today. I'm going to send it over to our faculty who's going to tell you a little bit about herself and the Chinese department at Reed, and then we'll open it up for questions. And so please go ahead and feel free to start putting questions in the chat that you want to make sure that we get to, and we'll have a real great casual conversation. All right. All right, take it away.
大家好，你们好。I saw a greeting in the chat that's written in Chinese, so I assume that you all have studied a little Chinese in the past. My name is Jing, Jing Jiang in English, but Jiang Jing in the Chinese order. I joined Reed, gosh, about 18 years ago now. So I've been here for a while. And I teach modern Chinese literature, Chinese film, and also language classes, mostly first year and second year, occasionally fourth year as well. So aside from me, there are two other faculty members, Alexei Ditter and Hyung Ru. So Hyung Ru has been at the college. He's the founding figure of the Chinese department. And I think he started in 1988. So way in the past, last century. But he's a specialist on classical Chinese philosophy, classical Chinese, and also like he's an expert on I Ching, the Book of Change. So every year, well, not every year, every couple of years, he would offer the course. And we always have students who are very interested in taking it. So that's Hyung. And then Alexei, he specializes in Tang poetry. He also teaches courses in like pre-modern Chinese fiction. One of the beloved courses he offers is the story of the stone and the literary traditions associated with Chinese pre-modern literature. Yeah, so basically three of us. If any of us goes on leave, then we would have like typically a visiting professor. This year we have Jing Hui, who specializes in Chinese religion, but also like Chinese literature during the Ming Dynasty period. Yes, so instead of me just chattering away, maybe I can help answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, it looks like we've got some questions to kind of clarify. Does everyone teach both language and kind of cultural classes?
Yes, that's a great question. That kind of gets to the core of our belief here at Reed. So every faculty is on kind of an equal footing. So we don't have like a second tier instructor that teaches languages only. So all professors in the division of literature and language teach both language classes and literature classes, which is actually super fun because oftentimes I would get to know students in my language class and then see them later on in my literature classes.
And we've got a great question from Cami here. Are there kind of combined classes where you're learning the language and also talking about the culture and the literature?
That's another really good question. So some of our literature courses are designated as Chinese lit, Chinese/lit. So if you are a student who are just interested in studying the cultural aspect of the things of the course, then you just take the course in translation. All the readings are in translation, discussion is conducted in English, and you write your papers in English. But for those who want Chinese credit and who have the necessary kind of proficiency, then we offer an additional hour of meeting. So for that subgroup of the class, we will be reading kind of the primary sources, not in its entirety, but select chapters or select samples of the original language material that go with the translation.
And that's an
So
extra meeting of those students within that class,
right.
doing that language component to it.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about, we've got some questions about placement. It sounds like we do have some students here who have taken classes. So how does the placement work?
The placement, I think it's now online. So you take the online exam for the written part of it. And then we kind of look at the test results. We have a rough idea about your language skill level, but we would still invite you for an oral interview to make sure that our assessment of your proficiency level is accurate in terms of both oral speaking skills and written and reading skills.
And does that happen over the summer virtually, or does it happen when they get to campus after they move in?
Well, yeah, it's a very good question. I don't feel like there is a very strict rule in the past. Like I did a combination of both. So I met with one group of students in person. So like myself and the visiting professor who teaches first year Chinese, and also the Chinese language scholar whom we have each year from China. Like the three of us interviewed the students. But there are also years I just interviewed people via Zoom. Yeah.
We've got a question here from Tristan about at what level are we expected to know both traditional and simplified Chinese?
Wow, all the questions are really fantastic, and they get to really the important aspect of our curriculum here. So I don't know whether it's traditional or simplified you learn in high school. But at Reed, once you take the classes here at Reed, we require you recognize both systems. So in terms of recognition, you need to be able to recognize both. But in terms of writing, you can choose one and stick with it.
That's helpful. Thank you. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about the trajectory of classes for the major. What kinds of classes are required for everyone? Where do they get some flexibility with their choice in what they're pursuing, and what does that path look like?
Mm-hmm. Right. I just realized that the information on the website might be a little outdated, and we need to update the information. So recently, the major requirement is revised and approved. But basically, we require about 6 courses within the Chinese department. So, well, we specify that one of the literature courses has to be within the pre-modern period and another within the modern and the contemporary period. And then there is flexibility in terms of the 300 level or above courses you take. That can be a combination of language/literature courses. So if you are very interested in like pursuing the language side of things, you can take fewer literature classes or vice versa. So that's a little bit of flexibility allowed in the system. For example, you can take 200 level, 300 level language classes, but then do 2 literature classes, or you can do 3 or even 4. Yeah, you can do up to 3, I think. Yeah, anyway, I so don't quote me on this. I'm not exactly clear. I think there is a cap on how many language classes you can take within the 4 300 level courses. But the idea is that you get a solid foundation in your language training, plus your exposure to literature and culture courses.
And what's the difference between the major and the minor in terms of requirements, but also why might someone choose to do one or the other?
That's again, very good question. So the difference between a major and minor, I would say, well, first of all, if you choose to major in Chinese, you have to write a thesis. As students who have signed up to come to read, thesis is like a unique thing that we do here. So everyone has to write a thesis in order to graduate. So if you choose to major in Chinese, you would have to write a thesis on a Chinese literary or cultural topic. But if you just want to minor, then you can just take 5 or 6 classes and then get the minor. And with your major being anything else, from computer science or math or whatever. Yeah. So that's the biggest difference. Another difference, I would say, for Chinese major, your exposure to the literary or cultural study would be more than a minor. So you can take a lot of language classes and only take maybe 2 literature classes, and then you can get a minor, but that's not gonna be enough for a Chinese major, because the first year and the second year Chinese are presumed for majors, but not explicitly listed as requirements. What is required is 300 level and higher courses. So definitely there is a huge difference.
So, for students who are really interested in getting that knowledge, that Chinese language knowledge, but potentially want to major in something else, that minor is a really great opportunity for them to take those classes and, get that education without having to write 2 theses potentially in 2 different majors.
Right.
Okay. So speaking of the thesis, can you tell us a little bit about that process, what students write their thesis about, how you guys support them through the process of deciding on a topic and doing that, year-long research project?
Mm-hmm. Right. So thesis is like a year-long process for your senior year. But prior to that, we kind of started helping students come to like a potential thesis topic. So in Chinese department, there is a qual you have to take, qualification exam. And I think you have to first initiate the process by telling one of the faculty members that I'm interested in taking the qual at a certain point. Typically, that's the summer of your junior year. And in the 1 semester prior to that, you would work with the faculty member, go through readings, come up with a list of books that would help you familiarize yourself with the literature about the topic you are interested in exploring and finding ways to narrow it down. So it will be kind of pretty intensive, well, not intensive, regular meeting between faculty and student who wants to call. That's for about one semester. And sometimes there are faculty members who want to offer a course like a methods. Like they would just offer a course on how to do research in Chinese related topics, and then use that as kind of preparation for the qual process. But basically, what's required at the end of the qual is a 20-page, 15 to 20-page paper. And then we would have like a conversation, 45 minutes long, approximately, to talk about the qual paper. So it's like a mini version of your orals at the end of your senior year.
Are there any theses that have stood out to you? I mean, you've been at Reed for a long time, so are there any that you particularly enjoyed or thought were really impressive?
Oh, yeah. I think two or three of my thesis students, they won like award at the divisional or college level. So one thesis I recall particularly fondly about is it's a thesis project on Chinese documentary. Documentaries made by kind of underground documentarians, and it's about about kind of bad things that happened in the 20th century China, and they were interviewing survivors of those political or natural disaster events, and they made that into kind of a series. So it's a folk memory project. And it was amazing. The student just put together a really thoroughly researched, really kind of inspiring and insightful analysis of the body of work that is rarely available in mainstream media or market. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah.
Are there study abroad opportunities for students in the department?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I think right now I have more students who go study in Taiwan. And as of now, we have one studying at Taida, National University of yeah, of Taiwan. And I just recently wrote a spate of recommendation letters for 7 or 8 students who are interested in going to Taiwan to study. I think China, as things return to normal, I hope to see more students to kind of resume going to China to study. We used to have students to go to Beijing or go to Xiamen, which is in southeast China. And then, well, fewer students choose to go to Shanghai, interestingly, but Beijing and Xiamen are very popular destinations as well.
Do students often study abroad in their sophomore year, or is it during their junior year, or kind of across the board?
Yeah, it's a little bit across the board, but mostly I would say sophomore year.
Yeah, because they're
Actually, most sorry. No, yeah, let me correct that. Most maybe in their junior year after they finish their second year Chinese.
so usually they might study abroad during the fall of their junior year, and then they're back here for junior qual their sophomore year, or can they study abroad in the spring as well? I mean, not sorry, their sophomore year, their spring semester for junior quals.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple of questions in here. I've got a good question about kind of what do people do with this major after they graduate? What kind of careers have previous students, gone into after completing a major in Chinese? And also, how does the department prepare students for life after college?
Hmm. Well, this is a very good but difficult to answer question. I think most of my students who have majored in Chinese have gone on to graduate school. So I have had students who got a PhD from Berkeley, a current student who is on a PhD program at Harvard, and a recent graduate who just got admitted into PhD programs in the US. So typically majors would go on furthering their study either in China or Taiwan first. So I have had a couple of students who let's say, went on to study for a master's degree in Taiwan or in mainland China before returning to the States to pursue a PhD degree. So I would say that most students would want to pursue like a more advanced degree after getting this degree. I know in the distant past, I've had students who majored in Chinese and just went on to become some really high management, do some really high level management job at Nike. So it was possible in the past. I'm not exactly sure whether that's still possible these days, but it definitely, yeah,
Well, I would
happened in.
imagine that a lot of students who do a minor in Chinese also are kind of using it as a way to, make themselves really stand out in their resume for whatever it is that they go into next, having that really strong language skill.
Right. Yeah, I think minor definitely my students who minor in Chinese would definitely have that advantage. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what do you think? Is there anything that sets our Chinese department kind of apart from our peer schools or other colleges with a Chinese major? Do you think what makes Reed special?
What makes Reed special? Well, there is a Chinese phrase called 王婆卖瓜，自卖自夸, like it's like bragging about your own wear. But I would not sing praises for our own department, which has like a pretty comprehensive coverage in the pre-modern and the modern period. But I would argue what makes Reed special, if you are interested in Chinese studies, is the wealth of faculty resource we have on campus. So Chinese department is part of the Chinese humanities program. So it's a course that we co-teach with a Chinese art historian, a Chinese historian, in the past, there used to be a religion scholar as well. So for a liberal arts college of our scale, that Reed is really impressive in the number of scholars doing China-related studies on campus. So what I mentioned is only faculty members who are involved in the teaching of Chinese Hume. But outside of the Chinese Hume, you also have a Chinese economist or economist who specializes in China-related topics, and then an anthropologist who teaches Tibetan culture and history and the development in her anthro courses. So we really have a rather impressive body of faculty resource. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a benefit across the college is that there are people, you've got three professors within the Chinese, department, but so many other experts in their fields that also relate. And so you can take classes in all of these different pieces of Chinese culture, economy, art history, all of those different things that build a broader picture and a broader education.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So more recently, like even departments like political science or theater have started to recruit Chinese faculty. So it's definitely like for a college our size, there is definitely a concentration of China-related faculty resource.
Mm-hmm. So Tristan's got a great question that I'm sure we come across fairly frequently, which is that, what if we have students who are native speakers but are just learning to write. So their speaking proficiency is higher than their writing proficiency. How does that work in terms of placement and classes?
Mm. That's a really good question. Historically, we don't really have classes designed for heritage speakers alone. I think the selected topics in literature, so it's like a 400 level language/literature courses. This is a class that's offered when there is sufficient student demand. So basically, it's a literature or culture class taught in Chinese, and we read Chinese material. And not every year we have a big enough number of students who have the requisite language skills to offer this course. But when there are, we do have that option. So in the case that course is not offered, there is always the option of independent study. So you can work with a faculty member for a half credit course. Basically, we can come up with the individually tailored syllabus, and the student and the faculty would meet once a week to go over the reading, to talk about them, and then to require some kind of writing as well in Chinese. Yeah, so that's definitely another option.
And I just want to kind of let students know, I think if when you're looking at any colleges, Reed, and anywhere else that you might be looking at, go look at the course catalogs. Most of it is all online. And so you can see these kinds of classes. Keep in mind, again, as Jing just said, that not everything is going to be offered every semester. The offerings will change from semester to semester, which is a good thing. So you might want to look at past semesters and see what's offered. And then, as we were just discussing, also look at, other divisions and other majors to see what related classes are offered that you might want to be looking at. I think that's a really good way to see kind of the breadth of classes that are offered. Are there classes offered in the kind of more specific things that you might be interested in? And making sure that you're, going 1 or 2 years back and seeing 4, 5, 6 semesters worth of classes and deciding if there's really cool things every semester that you'd be interested in taking and then in that major and in that class, because I think that's a really important thing to do. Great. So I'm gonna, if we have any more questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Jing, so you've been here since 2006, is that right? So,
Yes.
I'm sure you have choices of where you would go teach. So why do you stay? Why have you been here for almost 20 years? What it is about this place that makes you stay and teach here?
Oh, I'm not sure I have choices, but no. I think the students here are phenomenal. I learned so much from the students. When I first got here, it was kind of nerve-wracking because basically you don't really lecture to your students. The class is run conference style, which means it's free form discussion. And I think I am made a teacher by the brilliant students here. They are really wonderful and they are a joy to teach because, well, to teach, like the word is inappropriate sometimes because it's really a mutual process of growing. I feel like I grow so much because of the interaction with my students. And I feel like I can offer the little I know in the process, but it's definitely not a one-way traffic. And definitely the students here make the conversation so enriching. So yeah, it keeps everything new and worthwhile.
That's great. So Tristan is asking, are there Chinese history classes offered? They have an interest in early Republic of China.
Oh, absolutely. The historian we hired recently, she is a Qing historian. So she specializes in the border region issues of the Qing Empire, but she also kind of, her research also moves forward into the 20th century, and she offered courses on 20th century China. Her courses are heavily subscribed. So every single one of her courses like is filled to the brim. I'm very excited. Yeah, she's fantastic.
And what is filled to the brim? About how big is that?
24 students.
Okay, so
Yeah.
24 is about the max size that you would expect from taking classes in the department.
But even when you sign up for a very popular class like that, the teacher would make sure that it's a nice combination of perhaps mini lecture plus group discussion. So students would have sufficient opportunity to express their idea, to grapple with the material. So it's never like just a professor lecturing away at the podium type of situation.
And what is kind of the average class size, would you say, for most classes in the department?
Well, for the most classes, I would say around 15, give or take. So 12 maybe, or yeah, 12 to 15 is the more frequently seen number of Chinese literature classes, but history classes always attract a bigger audience.
I'm assuming that's because we've got, students from the history major and from all kinds of different departments that are taking those classes as well.
Right. So they can be used to fulfill group requirements, like social science group requirements. Yeah.
And Naomi is asking about what about earlier Chinese history, the Tang Dynasty, etc.
Oh, well, Alexei would love to answer that question. So Alexei specializes in Tang poetry. And yeah, he teaches a course on, I forgot which course he was teaching, but something about memory, genre, and Tang poetry. And Hyung loves to teach a course on 宋词. So it's a lyrical poetry set to musical tunes in the Song Dynasty, and it's much more nimble and much more kind of interesting than the proper shi type. So together, like you have an interesting combination of tangshi, high Tang, high literary genre poetry, and then the song style lyrical poetry. Yeah.
So how does Reed connect with the Chinese organizations or the Chinese community in Portland? Is the department connected in any way? Are there activities that y'all do to connect students into Chinese culture and here in Portland?
Oh, that's that's yet another great question. I don't think as a department we like the faculty is not directly involved in the community outreach, but the Chinese language house. So the Chinese language house, I think it's run, well, not run, supervised by the house administrator, Chinese HA, and the Chinese language scholar. So they do organize like once a semester campus-wide celebrations around 中秋节, the Mid-Autumn Festival, and 春节, the Chinese New Year. And in those celebrations, they oftentimes reach out to community, like a broader Portland area community, Chinese community. So they would invite, for instance, performance of line dancers in the community, or other type of artists like a pipa player or flute player. So there are always that kind of cultural themed events that involve a broader Portland area residents who have this cultural heritage. Yes.
And the language house, I'm glad we brought that up. I almost forgot about it. The language houses are a great way for students to really have that immersive living experience, a lot of the cultural components as we've just been talking about. And even if you're not living in the house, all those events tend to be open to everyone. So you are able to go, even if you're not living there, go meet the students and make friends and join in on all of those programs and events that they do. So it's much broader than just the students that are living in that house. But if that is something that you choose to do, you can start living in a language house as soon as your sophomore year. And so you can really have that really cool experience.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay, for adding that. So speaking of community kind of engagement, our language scholar this year applied for funding, and then she took 20-some students off campus to see Oregon Chinese New Year gala. Yeah, so there's definitely stuff happening in the Portland area, and there is also the Chinese garden. And the language scholar would take students to the Chinese garden. She would host like movie nights or dumpling nights or mahjong nights or karaoke nights. So it's kind of routine programming happening at the Chinese language house. That's why we feel so blessed, but also we are not like directly doing the work because they are already done by two excellent young people in charge.
Absolutely. All right. Anybody else have any questions? If you got anything else, please throw them in the chat. Want to make sure that we've got all your questions answered about the department. Jing, is there any final words you'd like to say? Anything that you'd encourage them to explore that they can find on the website or anything like that?
I'm happy to see you come to this information session. And I just want to say that if you're interested in the study of Chinese language or culture, like there's a lot of flexibility that can kind of help you grow according to your starting point, but also there's a lot of opportunities of related course offerings on this campus, which is really something of a rarity. Like I remember I went to AAS, which is short for Association for Asian Studies. This year, the annual convention was in Seattle, so I went there to attend. And I had lunch with some director at Notre Dame, and he was he was hopping mad because they don't even have a Chinese art historian. So me and another friend, we were both saying, well, we have a Chinese art historian. He's like, you guys are just doing this to me. I can't believe a place as big as Notre Dame, we don't have a Chinese art historian. So I only often realize that we take what we have for granted, but it's actually a rather rare thing that we have this many faculty members doing China-related research and teaching. So if you're interested in pursuing this learning interest, this is definitely the right place.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all of this information. Y'all were great students. Thank you so much for asking such great questions. And Jing, thank you for taking some time to answer them. Hopefully this was really helpful and informational. If you have any other questions, reach out to us. Make sure you get all the information that you need as you start making your decisions around where you want to be. And yeah, thanks again. I'll go ahead and wrap us up and thank everyone for your time. We have a beautiful evening here in Portland, so I hope it is lovely and sunny wherever you are in the world, and hope to see you at Reed someday. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you everybody for coming. 好，谢谢你们。